If you've bought fertilizer more than once for the same ugly patch of grass, there's a very good chance you've been solving the wrong problem the entire time. Every year, as soon as the weather warms up, homeowners all over the country repeat the same ritual. They walk into the garden center, stare at a wall of bright bags covered in words like green, thick, rapid, premium, maximum, and professional formula, and they grab the one that looks like it belongs on a championship golf course. Then they wrestle it into the trunk, drag it across the driveway, spread it across the yard, and wait for the miracle. And for a few days they feel hopeful. Because that bag didn't just sell nutrients, it sold a picture in their mind. A deeper color, a softer lawn, a fuller lawn. A yard that finally looks like somebody actually knows what they're doing. Then 10 days pass, 2 weeks pass, maybe even 3. And what happens? The same thing that happened last year. A little growth in one corner, a tiny color bump in another, but the yellow areas are still there. The thin strip by the sidewalk still looks weak. The patch under the tree still looks tired. The moss in the back isn't gone, the bare spots didn't magically fill in, and that big expensive promise printed across the front of the bag never really arrives. So most people do what the lawn industry trained them to do. They assume they didn't buy enough. So they go back and spend more. Maybe not on the cheap stuff this time. No, now it's the better formula, the premium blend, the slow-release one, the one with the extra micronutrients, the one with the tougher-sounding name, and the even prettier photo on the front. $40 becomes 60, 60 becomes 90. One season turns into a stack of receipts, and still the lawn looks like it's asking for help. Here's the part that almost nobody says out loud. A bad-looking lawn is not automatically a hungry lawn. And if you miss that distinction, you can spend all spring and half the summer feeding soil that your grass still can't use. That's the trap. And the reason it works so well is because fertilizer feels logical. Grass looks weak, so you feed it. That makes sense. It sounds responsible. It sounds like the obvious fix. But obvious and correct are not the same thing. Because in a huge number of struggling lawns, the issue is not that nutrients are missing. The issue is that the grass can't access what's already there. That is a completely different problem. And once you understand that, the whole lawn care aisle starts looking less like help and more like a very expensive distraction. There is one number beneath your lawn that controls more than most homeowners realize. It decides how available nutrients are. It affects color, density, root activity, microbial activity, and how efficiently your grass responds to anything you put down. If that number is off, you can dump product after product on your yard and still feel like you're getting half a result. That number is pH. Not the flashy stuff on the front of the bag. Not the giant nutrient numbers, not the marketing language, pH. And if your soil is too acidic, your lawn can look weak even when the soil already contains nutrients your grass needs. Think about it like this. Imagine your lawn is surrounded by food, but the door to the kitchen is jammed shut. You can keep buying groceries all day long, but if the door doesn't open, nobody eats. That's what low pH does. It turns nutrient-rich soil into a locked system. The food may be there, but the grass can't fully use it. That's why so many homeowners feel like they're doing everything right and still losing. They aren't crazy, they aren't lazy, they aren't cursed with impossible grass. They're just treating availability like deficiency. And those are not the same thing. Now, why does this happen? Because lawns don't live in a laboratory. They live outdoors. Rainfall changes things. Organic debris changes things. Time changes things. Year after year, water moves through your soil, carrying certain minerals downward, and gradually shifting the chemistry in ways most homeowners never notice. Shade can contribute, tree litter can contribute, moisture patterns can contribute. If you've got a lawn that has slowly become more disappointing no matter how much money you throw at it, this is one of the first places you should look. And this is where the story gets interesting. Because the thing that can help nudge acidic soil in the right direction may already be sitting in your pantry right now. Not in the garage. not at the hardware store, not behind a locked case with a professional price tag. In your pantry. And it costs next to nothing. I'm talking about baking soda. That plain little box most people forget exists until they need it for cookies, a fridge odor, or a sink scrub. That simple powder has a property that matters far more to acidic lawns than another random hit of fertilizer. In the right situation, used the right way, it can help gently move soil chemistry toward a range where grass can actually make better use of what's already in the ground. That doesn't sound sexy. I know it doesn't. It doesn't sound premium. It doesn't sound professional. It doesn't sound like something the lawn industry can build a yearly shopping cycle around. And that is exactly why it gets overlooked. Because simple fixes are bad for people who make money from complicated routines. Now let me be very clear before anybody runs outside and dumps a box on their yard. This is not magic. This is not works for every lawn. This is not a shortcut around paying attention. And this is definitely not permission to use more than you should. This only makes sense if your soil is actually acidic. That's why the first move is not application. The first move is testing. You need to know where you're starting. Not guessing, not assuming, not going by what your neighbor said, not going by how the grass looks from the street. Testing. Because if your soil is already neutral or leaning alkaline, you do not want to keep pushing it higher. That creates its own set of problems. So before you do anything else, check your pH. A cheap test kit costs less than most people spend on one impulse item at the checkout counter, and it gives you something fertilizer bags never do: actual context. That one little number tells you whether the lawn needs feeding, unlocking, or leaving alone. And that changes everything. If your pH comes back low, now you're not guessing anymore. Now you're working with the real issue. Now you're not buying solutions at random and hoping one of them accidentally works. Now you're making a correction with a purpose. That's the moment homeowners stop behaving like consumers and start behaving like problem solvers. And if you're the kind of person who is tired of wasting money on yard products that promise one thing and deliver another, subscribe to this channel right now, because that is exactly what I'm here to help you stop doing. I'm Eli Yoder, and every week I break down what actually moves the needle in a yard and what just empties your wallet. No hype. No unnecessary shopping list, just practical lawn care that makes sense. Now, if your soil is acidic, here's the key: small amounts, diluted, applied with patience. That's the game. Not heavy-handed, not dramatic, not if a little is good, more must be better. That mindset ruins more lawns than ignorance ever does. A mild baking soda solution is about gentle correction, not brute force. You're not trying to blast your soil into a new condition overnight. You're trying to nudge it, gradually, toward a range where nutrients become more usable and the grass can respond the way you expected it to respond all along. That's why timing matters. That's why dilution matters. That's why restraint matters. And that's why the people who dismiss methods like this usually fail for the same reason people fail with everything else. They use too much, too fast, under the wrong conditions, then blame the method instead of the misuse. If you decide to do this, do it calmly, do it methodically, do it on purpose. Light solution, even coverage, damp soil, cooler part of the day. Recheck before repeating too much. That discipline is what separates a correction from a mistake. And if you do it properly, the first change probably won't be explosive growth. It usually isn't. The first change is often visual. The lawn starts to lose that washed-out look. That tired, pale, almost dusty color begins to deepen. Not neon, not fake, just healthier, richer, more alive. The grass starts looking less like it's barely hanging on, and more like it has access to what it's been missing. Then the stand begins to look fuller. Not because you performed some miracle. Not because you discovered a secret fertilizer the stores don't want you to know about, but because once the soil chemistry stops getting in the way, the grass can finally behave more like healthy grass is supposed to behave. That's when people get confused. Because they think the powder fed the lawn. Not exactly. What it really did was remove one of the barriers that was keeping the lawn from benefiting from the nutrients that were already sitting there. That's a massive difference. And once you understand that difference, you start seeing why so many lawns stay stuck year after year. Homeowners keep adding input without checking whether the system can even use the input. That's like pouring more gas into a car with a locked ignition and then acting shocked when it doesn't leave the driveway. And yes, that should make people angry, because millions of homeowners have been taught to think in products instead of systems. Buy this, spread this, reapply this, upgrade to this, follow this seasonal program, add this booster, add this enhancer, add this special blend. But very few people are told to start with the basic condition that determines whether any of that will matter. Why? Because a corrected lawn is less dependent. A dependent customer is more profitable. That's the whole game. And the lawn industry is not unique in that. A lot of industries make more money treating visible symptoms than helping people solve root causes. The reason this topic hits so hard online is because viewers instantly recognize that pattern. Not just in lawn care, in everything. That's what makes this script powerful psychologically. It's not only about grass. It's about feeling manipulated, then reclaiming control. And when a homeowner realizes a cheap test and a $2 box may matter more than the premium bag they just bought, that realization spreads fast. Because it's not just useful, it's shareable. It makes the viewer feel like they discovered something. Let me ask you something. How much have you spent trying to fix the same bad patch? Seriously, think about it. One bag here, one spreader application there, a weed and feed in spring, a summer recovery blend, a fall formula, maybe lime, maybe iron, maybe something labeled Revive, or Green Max, or Turf Repair. Add it up. For some people it's $100. For some people it's $200. For some people it's way more than that. And what makes it sting is not just the money, it's the effort, the hauling, the spreading, the watering, the hoping, the checking every morning to see if today is finally the day it looks better. That's emotional labor, and it wears people out. So when they hear that the real issue may have been a basic soil condition all along, it lands with force. Not because the explanation is fancy, but because it explains their disappointment so cleanly. Now, I want to add something important here, because this is where smart homeowners can get even better results. Once the pH issue is moving in the right direction, the lawn often becomes more responsive overall. That means any future feeding you do becomes more efficient. It doesn't necessarily mean never use nutrients again. It means stop leading with fertilizer as your first reflex when the soil condition itself may be the bottleneck. That's a smarter order of operations. Correct the condition first, then evaluate response. Then decide if more input is actually needed. That single shift can save people a shocking amount of money. And it also changes how the yard behaves over time. Because healthy grass is not just greener, it competes better, it thickens better, it shades the soil better, it naturally discourages some of the ugly issues that love weak turf. A stronger stand of grass solves multiple visible problems at once. So when the lawn starts improving after the chemistry is corrected, people often feel like several issues are disappearing together. That creates the feeling of a breakthrough, and breakthroughs are what viewers remember. Now let me give you the 3 biggest mistakes people make with this approach. The first is skipping the test. That is pure laziness dressed up as confidence. If you don't test, you're gambling. You're not solving. You're guessing. And a lot of lawn problems are expensive precisely because homeowners would rather guess than measure. The second mistake is using too much. This is where impatience gets people in trouble. They want the result faster than the process allows, so they push harder, more powder, more often, hotter part of the day, dry soil, sloppy application. Then they create stress and act surprised. Gentle correction only works if it stays gentle. The third mistake is assuming every grass type and every region responds the exact same way. They don't. Some lawns are more sensitive, some soils behave differently, some climates are more forgiving. Some aren't. That's why observation matters, testing matters, rechecking matters. You want to work with your lawn, not force your lawn to obey a viral video. That said, when people do it correctly, the before and after can be dramatic enough that it feels almost unfair. I've seen homeowners spend years trying to outbuy a problem that really needed diagnosis, not another shopping trip. And once they switch from buying to understanding, the whole yard changes. The best part? It doesn't just save money, it restores confidence. Because nothing is more discouraging than doing all the right things and still feeling like your lawn is beating you. But once you know what to check first, you stop feeling helpless. You stop chasing random fixes. You stop reacting to packaging. You start reading the lawn like a system. That is a completely different level of control. And control is addictive in the best way. Because now you're not just hoping the yard improves this season. You know why it should. That's powerful. I'll tell you what really gets me though. It's how many homeowners have been made to feel like a nice lawn requires a permanent spending habit. Like a decent yard only belongs to the people who buy the most products, follow the most branded schedules, and keep stacking bag after bag in the garage. That's nonsense. A good-looking lawn usually has more to do with understanding than overspending. Yes, mowing matters. Yes, watering matters. Yes, timing matters. Absolutely. But if you build your entire lawn strategy on the assumption that every ugly symptom means add more fertilizer, you can spend a small fortune treating the wrong cause over and over again. And some companies are perfectly happy to let you do that. Not because it helps your lawn, because it helps their quarterly numbers. So if this video is already making you rethink how you've been approaching your yard, do me a favor and drop a comment with one word: tested or guessed. Be honest. Which one have you been doing? Because that one answer tells me almost everything about why a lawn is winning or losing. And if you know somebody who buys every new lawn product that shows up at the store, but still complains that the yard never looks right, send this to them. They may not need another bag. They may need a better first question. Now let's talk about what the transformation feels like, because this matters for retention and for belief. The lawn usually doesn't scream at you overnight. It whispers first. You notice one section looking less weak. You notice color evening out. You notice a patch that usually stays stubborn starting to soften visually. Then you notice that after mowing, the yard doesn't look as thin as it used to. The stand has a little more body to it, a little more density, a little more confidence. Then one day, you walk outside and realize the lawn is no longer making excuses for itself. It just looks healthy. That's the moment people love. Not because it looks like a sports field, not because it becomes perfect, but because the yard finally starts reflecting the effort they've been putting in all along. That's emotional closure. And emotional closure is one of the strongest drivers of shares, comments, and return viewers. People don't just want information. They want release. They want the story to resolve. So the best performing lawn content doesn't merely explain a method. It tells people why their frustration makes sense, who or what pointed them in the wrong direction, what simple shift can restore control, and what kind of visible proof they should expect first. That's exactly why this topic is exploding right now. It has all the ingredients of viral home care content: an everyday problem, a strong enemy, a cheap fix, a hidden mechanism, personal empowerment, and a transformation other people can literally see from the street. That combination is hard to beat. And if you take one thing from this, let it be this: stop assuming every struggling lawn is starving. Sometimes it's not starving at all. Sometimes it's locked out. Sometimes the nutrients are there, but the lawn can't use them well enough to show you the result you were promised. And when that happens, another bag of fertilizer is not a strategy. It's a reflex. A soil test is a strategy. A thoughtful correction is a strategy. Paying attention to chemistry before consumption is a strategy. That is how you stop spending money emotionally and start improving your yard intentionally. So before you buy one more expensive bag because the front picture made a promise your lawn never received, check the one condition that may be controlling the whole game. If your soil is acidic, that humble little pantry box could matter more than the premium product you almost bought this weekend. That doesn't mean every lawn needs it. It means the right lawn might need it first. And that's a much smarter way to think. I'm Eli Yoder, and next time I'm going to show you the mowing habit that quietly weakens more lawns than people realize, even when everything else looks right on paper. It's one of those mistakes that feels harmless because it's common, but once you see what it does over time, you'll never look at your mower the same way again. Subscribe now so you don't miss it, and if you've tested your soil already, put your pH number in the comments. I genuinely want to see how many people have been throwing product at a chemistry problem without even knowing it.